Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is April 8th. April has settled in now, and the flowering shrubs are beginning to prove it. Magnolia is first, those thick velvet buds holding their breath until one early week in spring coaxes them open. And then those white-cupped petals balanced on fragile bare branches. Then Forsythia, a rush of yellow before a single leaf appears. All flame, no hesitation, then growth like a weed. And Lilac, the fragrant lavender favorite that isn't ready yet. Still gathering, forming the clusters that will scent the whole yard when May steps in. Magnolia, Forsythia, and Lilac. April doesn't shout. It unfolds. And if you watch the shrubs, you'll see the order of it. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1783 that the Scottish horticulturist John Claudius Loudon was born. John wrote when most gardens were hidden behind walls, kept by estates, and seen by only a wealthy few. But as he walked, sketched, and studied, he began to draw bigger plans for gardens without walls. John imagined labels on trees, names sparking curiosity, meant to be read by anyone passing by. He imagined parks where a seamstress or a schoolchild could stop and study a leaf. And then, in 1825, everything shifted. Around that time, John read a strange novel called The Mummy. He admired the mind behind it so much that he arranged to meet the author, expecting to shake a man's hand. Instead, he met Jane Webb. They married in 1830, and from that point on, their lives and work became inseparable. Jane became John's closest collaborator in every sense of the word. His editor, his sounding board, and the person who wrote his words as he shaped them aloud. Jane would go on to become a garden writer herself, speaking plainly and directly to women and home gardeners who had rarely been invited into the conversation. John founded The Gardener's Magazine, a horticultural journal written not for lords or estate owners, but for people trying to learn what they could grow and how. The pages moved outward, folded, posted, and read at kitchen tables. Copies traveled from city to village, from one garden to another. All of John's work, the books, the magazines, and the teaching, answered a question that he wrote in a letter when he was a young man. He wrote, "I am now 23 years of age, and perhaps 1/3 of my life has passed away. And yet, what have I done to benefit my fellow men?" Through John and Jane Loudon, gardening knowledge, once kept behind walls, became something ordinary people could reach. Something they could learn, try, fail at, and love. There have not been many botanical couples, and only a few whose work was so closely joined. But before the Britons and the Brandegees, there were the Loudons. 2 minds, 2 writers, 1 life lived in gardens. And it was on this day, in 1793, that the Scottish botanist and plant hunter Thomas Drummond was baptized. He was born into a plant family. His father was a head gardener, and his brother ran a botanic garden. Plants filled in the rest. Tom took a slightly different path when he apprenticed at a small nursery near his home, a place where plants weren't only admired, they were collected, raised, and sold. This was where Tom learned the business side of horticulture, how to build stock, how to care for it through loss and winter, and how to pack living things carefully enough to survive a long journey. When Tom came of age, the nursery owner died. Tom bought the business from the widow and built a steady life with his wife, Isabel Mungo, a gardener's daughter. Their family came quickly, a life built between seed trays and supper tables. First a girl, then a boy, then another girl. Then came an unexpected invitation. Tom's careful work with moss had impressed William Hooker in Glasgow. There was a spot for Tom on a ship to North America. What followed was pure endurance. Thousands of miles through the Rocky Mountains, and then Texas, all alone. Wide, relentless, marked by floods, fever, a charging grizzly, and cholera. When food ran out, Tom survived on boiled leather and moss. Each day settled into a monotonous rhythm. Vasculum over his shoulder at dawn, plants collected, and then evenings by the fire. Papers drying, notes written until sleep finally took over. Despite the hardships, Tom felt he could make a life for his family in Texas, and he wrote of that dream in one of his final letters. "A few years here would soon make me more independent than I have ever been," he wrote. Heart full and the horizon calling. By February 1835, Tom was on a boat from Apalachicola, Florida, having trekked from Texas via New Orleans. On February 9th, he sailed for Havana for a quick orchid hunt, planning to loop back to Charleston, South Carolina, where he would board a ship for England and his family. But Tom never made it home. Weeks later, a letter reached William Hooker. Tom was found dead on a Havana dock, alongside cases filled with wilting orchids. Tom was in his early 40s. No autopsy was performed, and his death remains a mystery. But he was clearly one of the first victims of orchid delirium. In the last decade of his life, Thomas Drummond collected over 17,000 specimens. Today, Phlox Drummondii dots Texas roadsides with trumpet-shaped clusters in rose, pink, and white. The butterflies and hummingbirds adore it. It's tough and drought-tolerant, and you can grow it as an annual, and it will keep showing up. Not as a monument, but as a presence that's bright and ordinary. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear prose from the American novelist, essayist, and poet Barbara Kingsolver, born on this day, April 8th, in 1955. Barbara grew up in rural Kentucky, watching land shape lives long before she had words for it. Her work returns again and again to food grown close to home, to soil that remembers, and to the kind of patience learned only by staying put, like the swing creaking empty on a Kentucky porch. In Animal Vegetable Miracle, Barbara writes, "Adults do the same by pretending it all comes from the clean, well-lighted grocery store. We're like petulant teenagers rejecting our mother." Barbara has a way of saying the uncomfortable thing so plainly that you can't unhear it. The grocery store is not where food comes from. And somewhere deep down, we've always known that. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Grow Your Own Herbal Remedies by Maria Noel Groves. This book is part of Pressed Flowers and Garden Crafts Week here on The Daily Gardener. And that means all of this week's book recommendations feature the hands-on work of growing, gathering, and making something from your garden. Maria is an expert herbalist who has spent years helping people figure out not just what herbs to grow, but which ones their own bodies actually need. This book offers 23 garden plans built around the most common health needs: headache relief, immune support, stress relief, and a simple daily tonic. It's practical and specific, and it's grounded in real growing conditions. Maria emphasizes herbs that are safe, effective, and easy to grow, things that will actually thrive in a container or a garden bed and give you an abundant harvest. In the introduction, Maria wrote, "Plants are much more than a source of medicine. They have personalities." Plant, you get to know your medicine on a deeper level. You commune with the individual plants and your local ecosystem at large. Maria's book is a reminder that the herb garden is one of the oldest gardens there is, and one of the most useful ones you can put right outside your door. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1843 that Georgiana Malloy died in Augusta, on the far southwestern edge of Western Australia. When Georgiana arrived there years earlier, the settlement was small, the land unfamiliar, and the distance from her home almost unthinkable. But her days filled quickly. Children, illness, and weather that did not explain itself. Still, she walked. Georgiana gathered seeds between other tasks. She pressed flowers late at night, labeled them carefully with the names, dates, and places so that someone else might understand what grew there. Then she sent them away by ship, never knowing if they would arrive. Only that the work itself mattered. When Georgiana died at 39, her parcels were already on their way. Labels written, routes planned, hands she would never see doing the next part of her work. As we close the show today, remember, Magnolia opens first, white petals trembling against bare wood. Then Forsythia follows, a yellow flame. And the lilac is waiting, gathering scent for the moment May arrives. Plant them where you will pass each day so you won't miss the show. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.